The Vatican locked it away for centuries. The Ethiopian church guards it with armed soldiers. Most Christians have never heard of it, yet the New Testament quotes it directly. This is the Book of Enoch, and what it reveals about humanity's origins will challenge everything you thought you knew about the Bible. Jude verse 14 quotes Enoch's prophecy word for word. 2 Peter references his writings. Early church fathers like Tertullian and Origen considered it scripture. For the first 3 centuries of Christianity, believers read the Book of Enoch alongside Genesis and Psalms. Then something changed. Church councils met in secret. Debates raged behind closed doors, and when the dust settled, Enoch's book had vanished from the biblical canon. Not because scholars questioned its authenticity, not because the manuscripts were corrupted, but because what Enoch witnessed was too dangerous for ordinary believers to know. What did Enoch see that terrified church authorities? Why does the Ethiopian Orthodox Church still include it in their Bible, while Western churches pretend it doesn't exist? And what forbidden knowledge does it contain that could rewrite human history? The Book of Enoch tells the story of 200 angels who abandoned heaven. It names their leaders. It describes their crimes in explicit detail. It reveals technologies they taught humanity that we're only now rediscovering. And it explains the origin of evil in ways that make traditional theology uncomfortable. Genesis gives us 3 verses about these fallen angels. Enoch gives us 70 chapters. Scholars discovered multiple copies hidden in Ethiopian monasteries in the 1700s. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain fragments proving the text existed before Christ was born. Carbon dating confirmed manuscripts over 2,000 years old. Every archaeological discovery validated what the Ethiopian church had preserved. Yet most Bibles still exclude it. Most pastors never mention it. Most believers die without reading the testimony of the man who walked with God and never tasted death. Tonight we break that silence. We explore what Enoch recorded about the days before the flood. We examine why his warnings matter more now than ever. And we follow the bloodline of giants that somehow survived divine judgment to threaten Israel thousands of years later. This journey takes us from the Garden of Eden to the Valley of Elah, from antediluvian cities lost beneath ocean waves to the throne room of heaven itself, from the moment angels first lusted after human women to the day a shepherd boy killed the last giant king. If you're ready to discover biblical truths that churches feared to teach, hit that notification bell, because what comes next will challenge comfortable Christianity. The story begins not with the flood, or the giants, or even the fallen angels. It begins with a question that Genesis answers in 1 verse, but Enoch explores in shocking detail. If God created Adam and Eve as the first humans, why does Genesis chapter 6 mention the Nephilim as if readers already knew who they were? Why does it say they existed when the sons of God came to the daughters of humans and also afterward? What happened before Adam that the Bible barely mentions? Chapter 2, Before Adam, the first creation mystery, Genesis. Chapter 1 describes creation in 6 days, light and darkness separated. Land and sea divided, plants and animals formed. Then, on day 6, God creates mankind in his image. Male and female, he creates them. He blesses them and tells them to fill the earth and subdue it. This happens in chapter 1, verse 27. But then something strange occurs. Chapter 2 opens with the 7th day of rest. Then, verse 5 states that no shrub had yet appeared on earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not sent rain, and there was no one to work the ground. But wait, chapter 1 described plants created on day 3, so why does chapter 2 say no plants existed yet? Then verse 7 describes God forming man from dust and breathing life into his nostrils. This man becomes Adam. God plants a garden in Eden and places Adam there to work it. 2 creation accounts, 2 different sequences, 2 separate timelines. Traditional theology explains this as different writing styles or poetic repetition. But what if something else explains the discrepancy? What if chapter 1 describes an earlier creation that most churches never discuss? The gap theory suggests that between Genesis 1020, a catastrophic event occurred. Verse 1 states that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Verse 2 says the earth was formless and empty with darkness over the surface of the deep. The Hebrew word translated was can also mean became. What if the earth became formless and empty after initially being created perfect? What if something happened that required God to recreate and restore? Isaiah 45:18 says God did not create the earth to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. Yet Genesis 1:2 describes it as empty and formless. Jeremiah 4:23 uses identical language to describe divine judgment turning populated land into empty wasteland. The same Hebrew words appear. This suggests verse 2 describes not original creation but the result of catastrophic judgment. What judgment? What catastrophe? Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14 describe the fall of Lucifer, a perfect angel who walked among fiery stones. A guardian cherub who covered God's throne. Pride corrupted his heart. He declared he would ascend above the stars and make himself like the Most High. God cast him down. Violence filled his domain. Destruction followed his rebellion. When did this happen? Before Adam, before the garden, before human history begins. The earth existed in perfect form until angelic rebellion shattered it. God judged the rebellion and remade the world. Genesis chapter 1 describes that restoration, the 6 days of recreation, the preparation of earth for a new species created in God's image. This explains why Genesis 6 mentions the Nephilim as if readers knew them already. It explains why giants appeared suddenly with no origin story. It explains why fallen angels desired human women specifically. They had lost their original domain through rebellion. They saw humanity as a way to corrupt God's new creation and reclaim earthly authority. They watched humans multiply and fill the earth. They observed beauty and innocence, and they wanted what they could no longer have. The Book of Enoch confirms this timeline. It describes the Watchers as angels assigned to observe Earth after its restoration. Their job was simple: watch, report, do not interfere. For generations they obeyed. They witnessed Adam's creation. They saw the garden. They watched Cain murder Abel. They observed Seth's birth and his righteous lineage. They monitored human civilization as it spread and developed. And with each passing century, their desire grew stronger. Comment below if this pre-Adamic creation theory is new to you. How many believers have pastors who never mentioned the gap between Genesis 1001 and 1:2? Like this video if you're discovering biblical mysteries your church avoided. Share this with someone who thinks they know the entire Genesis story. 2 bloodlines emerged from Eden. Cain's descendants built cities and developed technology but abandoned God. Seth's descendants called on the Lord's name and maintained righteousness. For generations, these lines stayed separate. The sons of God from Seth's line and the daughters of men from Cain's line lived in different regions with different values. But human nature gravitates toward compromise. Boundaries eroded. Intermarriage began. The distinction blurred until you couldn't tell them apart. That corruption set the stage for something worse. The Watchers saw humanity's moral decline. They saw beautiful women without righteous male leadership. They saw an opportunity to do what Lucifer had attempted. If they couldn't rule heaven, they would rule earth. If God wouldn't give them authority, they would take it. And on Mount Hermon, 200 angels made a pact that would damn the world. Chapter 3. The Watcher's Oath on Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon rises over 9,000 feet at the border of ancient Israel and Syria. Snow covers its peaks most of the year. Ancient Canaanites considered it sacred, building temples and altars on its slopes. The name Hermon means forbidden place. Local legends spoke of divine beings descending there, and according to the Book of Enoch, those legends preserved truth. Enoch chapter 6 records what happened. The angels saw human women and found them beautiful, but this wasn't innocent appreciation. The Hebrew term translated saw implies lustful gazing with intent. They didn't just notice beauty, they coveted it. They desired physical union with creatures beneath their nature. This violated every principle of divine order. Angels don't reproduce, they don't marry. Jesus himself confirmed that angels in heaven neither marry nor are given in marriage. These angels rejected their heavenly state to pursue earthly pleasure. Their leader was named Semjaza. Enoch lists the other chiefs: Azazel, Arachiel, Ramiel, Kokabeel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Dano, Ezekiel, Barachiel, Azael, Amaros, Batariel, Ananiel, Zachiel, Samsapiel, Satariel, Tariel, Yomio, and Sariel. 20 leaders commanding 200 angels total. Semjaza proposed the plan, but hesitated. He feared bearing sole responsibility for such transgression. So they made a pact on Mount Hermon. All 200 swore mutual oaths and bound themselves with curses. They agreed that every one of them would descend. Everyone would take human wives. Everyone would share the guilt. This collective oath reveals sophisticated understanding of responsibility and judgment. Semjaza knew the act was wrong. He knew punishment would follow. By distributing guilt among 200 rebels, he hoped to minimize individual consequences. If all sinned together, perhaps God would show mercy rather than destroy so many at once. It was calculated rebellion, premeditated transgression, and deliberate violation of cosmic law. They descended on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared, Enoch's great-great-great-grandfather. The name Jared means descent, marking the generation when angels came down. The timing matters. This occurred approximately 1,000 years after Adam's creation. Human civilization had developed. Cities existed. Technology had advanced. Culture had formed. Into this established world came beings with supernatural knowledge and power. The angels took human form. Enoch describes them as appearing like men, but radiating otherworldly beauty. Women found them irresistible. Who could reject such magnificent beings? They chose whichever women they wanted. Genesis 6:2 says the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful and they married any of them they chose. The word chose indicates selection without consent. These weren't romantic courtships. These were powerful beings taking what they desired from a population that couldn't refuse. The marriages produced children. But these children weren't normal humans. They weren't fully angelic either. They were hybrids called Nephilim, which means fallen ones, or those who cause others to fall. Genesis 6:4 states that when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterward. That final phrase haunts theologians. The Nephilim existed before the flood and also afterward. How could they survive if God destroyed all life except Noah's family? That question demands its own chapter. For now, understand that the Nephilim were unlike anything Earth had produced. They inherited angelic strength and knowledge combined with human form and appetite. They grew larger than normal humans. They lived longer. They possessed abilities that seemed like magic to ordinary people. But the corruption went deeper than hybrid offspring. The Watchers brought forbidden knowledge that accelerated human civilization in dangerous directions. They taught secrets humanity wasn't ready to handle, skills that elevated technological capability while destroying moral foundations. And the chief teacher of forbidden arts was Azazel. Subscribe if you're fascinated by these biblical mysteries that connect ancient texts with modern discoveries. Hit like if this detailed exploration of scripture beats surface-level sermons. And comment your thoughts on why God allowed the Watchers to rebel if he knew the consequences. The Book of Enoch devotes entire chapters to cataloging what the fallen angels taught. Each Watcher specialized in different knowledge. Each contributed unique corruption. Together they transformed human society from simple agricultural communities into sophisticated civilizations pursuing dark purposes. The skills they taught still shape our world today. The knowledge they revealed opened doors that perhaps should have stayed closed. And it all began with Azazel's teachings. Chapter 4. Azazel's Forbidden Teachings. Enoch. Chapter 8 lists Azazel's crimes with prosecutorial precision. He taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He showed them metals and the art of working them. He revealed how to make bracelets, ornaments, antimony for beautifying eyelids, precious stones, and coloring dyes. This might sound innocent until you understand the implications. Before Azazel, humans used stone and wood tools. Conflicts were personal and limited. Wars involved dozens, maybe hundreds of combatants. Casualties were measured in single digits. Then metallurgy arrived. Suddenly swords could slice through leather armor. Bronze weapons gave military advantages that decided tribal dominance. Iron weapons made conquest efficient. Shields and breastplates turned warriors into tanks. Warfare transformed from limited skirmishes into campaigns of extermination. Archaeological evidence confirms sudden advancement in ancient metallurgy. Bronze Age technology appeared almost overnight in human history. Civilizations jumped from stone tools to sophisticated metalworking with minimal transitional phases. Conventional archaeology struggles to explain this rapid development, but Enoch provides an answer. Angels taught it. Supernatural beings transferred knowledge that should have taken millennia to develop through natural discovery. Azazel also taught cosmetics and ornamentation. This wasn't about hygiene or practical grooming. He taught vanity. He introduced the concept of enhancing beauty artificially to attract attention and provoke lust. Women learned to paint their eyes with antimony. They discovered dyes to color fabrics in ways that displayed wealth and status. They adorned themselves with jewelry that announced social hierarchy. Suddenly, appearance mattered more than character. External beauty overshadowed internal virtue, and sexuality became a tool for manipulation rather than an expression of covenant love. The other Watchers taught additional corruptions. Arachiel taught the signs of the earth. Ramiel taught astrology and the constellations. Kokabeel taught the movements of stars. Ezekiel taught knowledge of clouds and weather signs. Orachiel taught divination through natural phenomena. Barachiel taught astrology. Akibiel taught portents and omens. Tamiel taught astronomy but also how to see spirits. Asaradel taught the motion of the moon. Notice the pattern. Every form of knowledge involved predicting the future apart from God. Astrology claims the stars control destiny. Divination seeks hidden knowledge through occult means. Reading omens attempts to know tomorrow without trusting God for today. These practices replace faith with formulas. They substitute divine relationship with mechanical techniques. They give humans power while removing dependence on the Creator. Enoch records other teachings too disturbing to detail. Root cutting refers to harvesting plants for their psychoactive properties. Certain roots induced hallucinations, others caused abortions. Some created poisons that killed slowly without detection. Knowledge of these plants transformed medicine into murder. Healing arts became death arts, and fallen angels taught it all with apparent generosity while knowing the destruction it would cause. The worst teaching involved sorcery and enchantments. Pharmakeia in Greek refers to drug use connected with magic rituals. Fallen angels taught humans how to contact spiritual entities. They explained rituals that opened portals to demonic realm. They revealed chants and sacrifices that gave access to supernatural power. Humans learned to traffic with demons, summoned evil spirits, and practice witchcraft. The invisible barrier between physical and spiritual realms broke down. Entities that should have remained confined crossed into human experience. Why did fallen angels teach these things? Pure malice doesn't fully explain it. They sought worship. By making themselves indispensable sources of knowledge and power, they positioned themselves as gods deserving reverence. Cities built temples to Azazel. Women sacrificed to Arachiel before childbirth. Farmers offered firstfruits to Ramiel. The Watchers received honor that belonged to God alone. They also sought to corrupt human genetics and cultures so thoroughly that redemption became impossible. God had promised that the seed of woman would crush the serpent's head. A future deliverer would come through human lineage. But what if human lineage became so polluted that no pure stock remained? What if every bloodline carried angelic DNA? What if the promised Redeemer couldn't be born because humanity no longer existed in original form? This explains the urgency of divine judgment. The flood wasn't divine tantrum or overreaction. It was surgical removal of genetic cancer before it metastasized beyond healing. Every day the Nephilim lived, they spread their corrupted seed. Every year the Watchers taught, more knowledge corrupted more people. Time was running out to preserve uncorrupted humanity through which the Messiah could eventually come. But judgment required patience. God doesn't act rashly. He sent Enoch as a prophet to warn. He allowed time for repentance. He gave generations to turn from wickedness. And when mercy was exhausted, when corruption had progressed beyond recovery, when even thoughts and imaginations of human hearts were only evil continually, then and only then did the floodwaters rise. Like this video if these connections between ancient texts and biblical theology fascinate you. Share with someone who's never heard the Book of Enoch explained this way, and drop a comment on whether you think modern occultism traces back to these fallen angel teachings. The Watchers didn't stop with teaching humans. They began experimenting with creation itself. They mixed species that were never meant to combine. They bred creatures that violated natural order, and the results were monsters that haunted ancient nightmares. Chapter 5, When Angels Created Monsters. Genesis 6:12 says God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. That word corrupted in Hebrew is shakath, meaning to decay, ruin, or destroy, but also to pervert or make abominable. It's the same word used for mixing different kinds of seeds or crossbreeding animals, practices that Leviticus later forbids. This suggests the corruption involved more than moral wickedness. It involved genetic tampering. The Book of Jasher, referenced twice in the Old Testament as authoritative, provides disturbing details. Chapter 4 verse 18 states that the sons of men began to mix the animals, one species with another, to provoke the Lord. They crossbred species that God had created distinct, horses with donkeys producing mules, cattle with different animals producing hybrids. The text suggests this went far beyond simple crossbreeding. They created abominations that shouldn't have existed. Ancient mythology preserves memories of these creatures. The Sphinx of Egypt, a lion with human head. The Centaur of Greece, half man and half horse. The Minotaur of Crete, half man and half bull. The Chimera, combining lion, goat, and serpent. Every ancient culture has legends of hybrid creatures. Traditional scholars dismiss these as pure mythology. But what if they're corrupted memories of real genetic experiments? The Watchers possess knowledge of creation's fundamental principles. They understood genetics before DNA was discovered. They knew how to manipulate life at cellular level, and they taught the Nephilim, their hybrid offspring, how to continue the work. Soon, the earth filled with creatures that violated every boundary God had established at creation. Enoch describes some of these abominations, giants who devoured all the acquisitions of men. When human resources were exhausted, the giants turned on people themselves. Cannibalism emerged not from starvation, but from insatiable appetite. The Nephilim consumed everything in their path like locusts. Fields were stripped bare, herds vanished, granaries emptied, and then the giants began eating humans. But worse than mere cannibalism, they consumed blood. Leviticus later forbids eating blood because the life is in the blood. Blood carries spiritual significance beyond nutrition. When the Nephilim drank blood, they weren't just feeding bodies. They were committing spiritual violation. Some ancient texts suggest they sought to absorb vitality and extend their already long lives. Others hint at ritual sacrifice involving blood consumption that opened doors to demonic empowerment. The Watchers had taught humans to offer sacrifices to them as gods. These sacrifices soon involved human victims. Children were burned alive in the arms of bronze idols heated red hot. Young men and women were slaughtered on altar stones while priests collected blood in bowls. The innocent blood cried out from the ground just as Abel's blood had cried out after Cain murdered him. except now the blood of thousands soaked the earth. Genesis 6:5 records God's grief. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Not sometimes evil, not mostly evil, only evil all the time. Every thought, every imagination, every intent of every heart from morning till night pursued wickedness continuously. This wasn't exaggeration. This was diagnostic precision. Humanity had reached the point where redemption through teaching or example had become impossible. The corruption was total. Even infants born into this world were born into a system that would shape them into monsters. There were no neutral environments left, no safe places, no communities preserving righteousness, except one family. 8 people total who still called on the name of the Lord. Noah and his wife, their 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, their sons' wives. 8 humans out of perhaps millions who remained uncorrupted in genetics and spirit. 8 people who would become the bottleneck through which all future humanity would flow. The creatures that filled the earth weren't just biological horrors. Some ancient texts describe spiritual hybrids, entities that were neither flesh nor spirit but something in between. Demons given physical form through forbidden rituals. Fallen angels inhabiting constructed bodies. Things that walked and talked but possessed no souls. No capacity for redemption. No place in God's created order. How do we know such things existed? Because after the flood, when all flesh died, the spirits of the Nephilim had nowhere to go. Angels return to the spiritual realm when they leave physical form. Humans proceed to judgment, but the Nephilim were neither. Their spirits became the demons that Jesus and his disciples cast out during New Testament ministry, entities seeking embodiment, haunting dry places, desperate for flesh to inhabit because their own bodies had drowned millennia before. This explains why demons beg not to be sent into the abyss, why they prefer inhabiting pigs over remaining disembodied, why they cause such havoc in human hosts. They're trying to recapture what they lost when floodwaters covered their hybrid bodies. They're refugees from antediluvian civilization, trapped in a world that's moved on without them. Subscribe to this channel if these connections between Old Testament, banned books, and New Testament are blowing your mind. Hit like if you've never heard demons explained this way before. Comment below on what you think happened to those hybrid creatures when they died. The earth groaned under the weight of corruption. Violence filled the land. Blood soaked the ground. Hybrid creatures roamed freely, and towering above it all, literally, were the Nephilim, the giant offspring of angels and women, the mighty men of old, the heroes of renown who were actually tyrants and monsters. These were the kings who ruled the antediluvian world. Chapter 6, the Nephilim kings and their empires. The Bible gives us one measurement for ancient giants. Deuteronomy 3:1 describes Og, king of Bashan, whose bed was made of iron and measured 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. Using the standard cubit of 18 inches, that's 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide. Og himself stood somewhere between 11 and 13 feet tall. And Og lived after the flood. The pre-flood Nephilim were likely even larger. Ancient historians recorded giant legends across cultures. Josephus, the Jewish historian, wrote that the giants had massive bodies and faces, so unlike ordinary humans that seeing them was astonishing and hearing their voices terrified listeners. Greek mythology spoke of titans who ruled before the gods. Norse legends told of Jotnar, giant beings who preceded humanity. Hindu texts described Deities, massive warriors who fought against the gods. Every ancient civilization preserved some memory of a race of giants. The Book of Giants, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, provides narrative about pre-flood Nephilim. These fragments describe giants named Oyar and Hayar, who had disturbing dreams about divine judgment. They saw tablets thrown into water. They witnessed devastating destruction, and they knew these dreams meant death was coming. They sought Enoch to interpret their dreams. He confirmed their worst fears. Judgment would not spare them. These weren't mindless brutes. The Nephilim possessed intelligence inherited from angelic fathers. They built cities with architecture that defied normal engineering. They established kingdoms with sophisticated governance. They created art and literature. But they used all their abilities for evil. Superior intelligence combined with corrupted nature produces the worst kinds of tyrants. The Nephilim ruled through fear and force. What human army could resist warriors twice their height and 10 times their strength? A single Nephilim could rout 100 normal soldiers. They wielded weapons no human could lift. They wore armor no human could pierce with stone or bronze weapons. They were living siege engines before siege engines existed. Ancient texts describe their appetites as insatiable. They required massive quantities of food daily just to maintain their size. Some accounts say one Nephilim ate as much as 1,000 normal men. They consumed entire harvests. They slaughtered whole herds in single meals. And when food grew scarce, they turned on humans. The Book of Enoch states they turned against humanity to devour them. Cannibalism among the Nephilim became commonplace. They ate humans openly, without shame or concealment. Parents hid children when giants approached. Villages became ghost towns when Nephilim came near. Humanity lived in terror, unable to resist, unable to fight back, unable to escape. The strong devoured the weak. The large consumed the small. And there was no justice, no protection, no hope. The Nephilim also took multiple wives, hundreds at a time. They established harems that rivaled later human kings. Every beautiful woman was seized for their pleasure. They showed no restraint, no monogamy, no respect for human dignity. Women became property to be collected and used. And from these unions came more Nephilim. The giant population exploded. But the giants weren't content with merely ruling humans. They began fighting each other. Territory disputes, resource competition, pride and rivalry. Giant clashed with giant in battles that devastated landscapes. When beings that large fight, everything around them suffers. Cities were crushed, forests were trampled, mountains crumbled. The earth itself bore scars from their conflicts. Their wars employed forbidden knowledge taught by fallen angels. They used advanced metallurgy to forge weapons of unprecedented destructive power. They practiced sorcery to curse enemies and protect themselves. They consulted demons for battle strategies. They sacrificed prisoners to dark entities in exchange for supernatural strength. Warfare became spiritual as much as physical. Archaeological mysteries hint at pre-flood civilizations. Massive stone structures that require technology we don't possess. The Baalbek stone in Lebanon weighs 1,650 tons and was moved and placed precisely. Modern cranes can't lift it. The Moai statues of Easter Island weigh up to 80 tons and were transported miles across rough terrain. Pumapunku in Bolivia features stones weighing over 100 tons cut with laser precision. Conventional archaeology has no good explanations for how ancient people accomplished these feats. But if giants existed, giants with both superhuman strength and supernatural knowledge, these accomplishments become feasible. The Nephilim could move stones that would take hundreds of humans to budge. They could carve rock with tools we haven't rediscovered. They could transport massive blocks across distances that seem impossible for ancient technology. The monuments weren't built by primitive humans. They were built by sophisticated giants. The Nephilim also established religion with themselves as objects of worship. They set up temples where humans offered sacrifices. They demanded first fruits, firstborn animals, and eventually firstborn children. They positioned themselves as intermediaries between humanity and the divine. They received prayers, granted blessings, and punished disobedience. They became the gods of mythology that later cultures remembered. Baal, Molech, Dagon, Chemosh, Asherah. These weren't imaginary deities, they were Nephilim or fallen angels who demanded worship. When the Bible rails against idol worship, it's not condemning worship of lifeless statues. It's condemning worship of real entities who stood behind those statues. demons and Nephilim spirits who received the honor and accepted the sacrifices. Like this video if you're seeing ancient history in a completely new light. Share this with someone who thinks mythology and the Bible have nothing in common. Comment below on which ancient mystery structure you think giants might have built. But one man stood apart from this corruption. One man walked with God while the world walked toward destruction. One man received revelation about what was coming and warning about what to do. His name was Enoch, and his story is unlike anyone else's in Scripture. Chapter 7, Enoch's Journey Through Heaven's Courts, Genesis, dedicates only 4 verses to Enoch. Chapter 5, verses 21 through 24 state that Enoch lived 65 years and became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. 300 years of walking with God, not walking before God in obedience, not walking after God in pursuit, walking with God in companionship. The Hebrew phrase suggests intimate friendship, daily communion, constant fellowship. Enoch knew God personally in ways that perhaps no human since Adam had experienced. The Book of Enoch claims to be Enoch's first-person account of visions and revelations he received. Whether the text we have today is authentically from Enoch or later expansion of his teachings remains debated. But the early church accepted it, Jews before Christ studied it, and it provides details about the antediluvian period that Genesis mentions only briefly. Enoch describes being taken in vision to heaven's throne room. He saw the crystal sea before God's throne. He witnessed countless angels in perfect worship. He observed the 4 living creatures that Ezekiel and John would later describe. He saw into the very heart of divine glory, and he received commissions to carry messages between heaven and earth. The Watchers who had fallen begged Enoch to intercede for them. These powerful beings who defied God, corrupted humanity, and fathered monsters now trembled before judgment. They asked a mortal man to plead their case. They composed a petition asking for mercy, and they sent Enoch to present it. Enoch brought their petition before God's throne. The answer was absolute refusal. No mercy for the Watchers, no forgiveness for the Nephilim. The corruption had progressed beyond redemption. The sentence was final. The Watchers would be bound in darkness until final judgment. Their offspring would die violently, watching each other destroyed before their eyes, and their names would be remembered as warnings for all future generations. Enoch returned to earth with this message. He confronted Azazel directly. He told Semjazer their fate. He explained to the 200 that no petition would be granted, no mercy extended, no appeal possible. The Watchers had known the law before breaking it. They had understood the consequences before accepting them. And now those consequences would fall. The Book of Enoch describes Enoch's other visions. He saw the place prepared for the righteous dead. He witnessed the prison prepared for fallen angels. He observed the tree of life that Adam and Eve had lost access to. He learned secrets about the motion of heavenly bodies, the cycles of seasons, and the structure of the cosmos. He also received prophecy about the flood, specific details about how it would come, how long it would last, what would survive and what would perish. He was told that his great-grandson Noah would be the agent of preservation. He learned that 8 humans total would enter the ark, and he knew that everything else would die. Did Enoch tell others? Did he preach to the antediluvian civilization? 2 Peter calls Noah a preacher of righteousness. If Noah preached, he likely learned it from his great-grandfather Enoch. For 3 centuries, Enoch walked with God and presumably shared what he learned. For 3 centuries, he warned about coming judgment, and for 3 centuries, the world ignored him. Then, at age 365, Enoch disappeared. Genesis says God took him. Hebrews 11:5 states that by faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. He simply vanished from Earth. One day he walked with God and didn't come back. Why was Enoch translated? Several theories exist. Perhaps God removed him to spare him from witnessing the worst corruption before the flood. Perhaps Enoch had completed his mission and God rewarded his faithfulness. Perhaps his translation served as a sign to others that God was real and judgment was coming. Or perhaps God had other assignments for Enoch in the heavenly realms. Some traditions say Enoch became the archangel Metatron, the voice of God who speaks divine decrees. Others say he was preserved to return as one of the 2 witnesses in Revelation who prophesy for 1,260 days before the end. Still others believe he remains in paradise awaiting the resurrection. Whatever his ultimate fate, his earthly mission ended with translation rather than death. Enoch's son, Methuselah, lived longer than any human in recorded history, 969 years. His name means, when he dies, it shall come. Some scholars believe his name was itself a prophecy. As long as Methuselah lived, judgment was delayed. The year he died, the flood came. God's mercy extended for nearly a millennium, giving maximum opportunity for repentance. But when Methuselah finally died, the floodgates opened. Methuselah's son Lamech had a son named Noah, meaning rest or comfort. Lamech prophesied that Noah would comfort them concerning the work and painful toil of their hands, caused by the ground the Lord had cursed. Noah was born into a world dominated by giants and corruption. He grew up knowing that judgment was coming, and God gave him an impossible task: build a boat large enough to preserve life through global catastrophe. Subscribe if you're fascinated by Enoch's mysterious translation and what it might mean. Like this video if these biblical details are news to you, and comment on whether you think Enoch could be one of the 2 witnesses who return in Revelation. The stage was set for divine judgment. The corruption had reached its peak. The Nephilim ruled the earth. Violence filled the land, and one righteous man received blueprints for the largest wooden vessel ever constructed. Noah's Ark would preserve life through the flood, but what really happened inside that ark during the year it floated? Chapter 8, The Ark and What Really Happened Inside Genesis gives us the ark's dimensions: 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Using the standard cubit of 18 inches, that's 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Modern naval architects have studied these proportions and concluded they're ideal for stable floating in rough seas. The ratio provides maximum stability while preventing capsizing. Whoever designed the ark understood hydrodynamics at an advanced level. God commanded Noah to make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. The Hebrew word for pitch is kopher, related to the word kippur, meaning atonement or covering. The same word used for the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. The same concept of covering sin. Even the waterproofing material foreshadowed redemption through covering. 3 decks divided the interior: lower deck for largest animals and feed storage, middle deck for medium animals, upper deck for smallest animals, birds, and Noah's family. A door in the side provided entry. A window or opening near the top allowed ventilation, and once everyone entered, God himself shut the door. Genesis 7:16 specifies that the Lord shut him in. Divine seal, divine protection, and divine imprisonment until waters receded. How did they gather the animals? Critics mock the logistics. How could Noah collect animals from every continent? How did kangaroos get from Australia? How did pandas travel from China? But the text says the animals came to Noah. He didn't hunt them down. They migrated under divine compulsion. Birds flew to the ark. Animals walked, crawled, or swam depending on their nature. God sent them. Noah received them. How many animals? The text says 2 of every kind, male and female, 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean. The word kind doesn't mean species in modern taxonomy. It means broader categories. 2 of the dog kind, not 2 of every dog breed. 2 of the cat kind, not 2 of every feline species. Modern biodiversity came from variation within these original kinds after the flood. This reduces the number dramatically. Estimates range from 1,000 to 7,000 individual animals depending on how broadly you define kinds. The ark had plenty of room. Calculations show the total volume could hold over 125,000 sheep-sized animals. Even generous estimates of animal passengers don't approach that capacity. There was room for animals, food, water, and the 8 humans with space left over. But space was the least of their problems. How did they feed carnivores without depleting the breeding population? How did they manage waste from thousands of animals? How did they prevent disease in confined quarters? How did they calm frightened animals during violent storms? And how did 8 people do all this work for over a year? Some ancient texts suggest the animals entered a state of hibernation, divinely induced dormancy that reduced their needs. They required less food, produced less waste, and caused less work. Noah and his family made daily rounds feeding and caring for those that needed it while most animals simply slept. This would also explain how Noah could be righteous enough to save yet still get drunk immediately after exiting the ark. A year of relative inactivity followed by sudden freedom and wine proved overwhelming. The flood began with violence. Genesis 7:1 says, "All the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Underground water reservoirs exploded upward. The earth's crust fractured. Massive geysers shot water miles into the air, and simultaneously, torrential rain fell for 40 days and nights. Water came from below and above. The antediluvian world was crushed between colliding oceans. Outside the ark, chaos reigned. People scrambled to high ground. The Nephilim discovered that size offered no advantage against rising water. Their strength couldn't hold back the flood. Their knowledge couldn't predict safe refuge. Their supernatural fathers couldn't save them. The Watchers were already bound in judgment. The Nephilim died like everyone else. Ancient texts describe the giants' final hours. Some tried to survive by building rafts, but the violence of the water destroyed them. Others climbed mountains only to have the water follow. The tallest Nephilim stood on peaks, water rising around them until finally even they drowned. Their desperate cries filled the air as water claimed them one by one. For 40 days rain fell, for 150 days water rose. Genesis 7:20 says the waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits, over 20 feet of water above the highest peaks. Everything that breathed air died. Every human, every animal, every bird, every creature. Only those in the ark survived. Inside, darkness prevailed. No windows to see outside, just sounds of water pounding the hull, animals stirring, and the constant motion of waves. For months they floated with no way to control direction or destination. Complete dependence on God for survival. The same God who had shut them in would eventually lead them out. But until then, they lived in wooden darkness. The psychological toll must have been immense. Imagine living in a massive floating barn for over a year. The smell of thousands of animals, the sounds never ceasing, the motion making you seasick. No way to know if you'd ever see land again. No updates on the water level. No information about whether the ark was still intact. Just faith that God who shut the door would also open it. After 150 days, the water started receding. Genesis 8:4 records that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. But they couldn't exit yet. Water still covered everything. Noah sent out a raven that flew back and forth, then a dove that returned because it found nowhere to land. 7 days later, another dove that returned with an olive leaf. 7 days later, a final dove that didn't return. Finally, after an entire year, God commanded Noah to exit. The door opened. Sunlight flooded in after a year of darkness. Fresh air replaced the smell of confined animals. Noah, his family, and every animal stepped onto Earth completely transformed. Like this video if you never considered what life inside the ark really involved. Share with someone who thinks the Noah story is simple children's tale. Comment below on how you think Noah maintained faith during that year of darkness. The post-flood world was empty, silent, clean. 8 humans stood on a mountain looking at a planet scrubbed of corruption. The Nephilim were dead. The Watchers were imprisoned. Humanity had a fresh start, but incredibly, impossibly, the giants would return. Chapter 9. Why giants returned after the flood. Numbers chapter 13 records Israel's spies entering Canaan. Verse 33 states they saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak came from the Nephilim. This verse alone has generated centuries of theological debate. How could Nephilim exist after the flood destroyed them all? Several explanations have been proposed. The most common suggests the term Nephilim became generic for any giants, not necessarily literal descendants of Watchers. The spies used familiar terminology to describe unusually tall people. This explanation preserves flood theology but requires assuming the spies exaggerated or used imprecise language. Another theory proposes corrupted genetics survived through one of Noah's daughters-in-law. Noah himself was righteous and genetically pure, but the Bible doesn't specify the lineage of his sons' wives. If one carried recessive Nephilim genes, those could express in later generations. This explains how giants appeared centuries after the flood while maintaining that Noah's immediate family was uncorrupted. The most controversial explanation suggests the Watchers repeated their original sin. Not all fallen angels were imprisoned after the first rebellion. Some remained free. After the flood, seeing humanity vulnerable and small in number, they descended again, took human wives again, produced Nephilim again. Same sin, new generation, same monstrous results. The Book of Jubilees supports this view. It describes how, after the flood, the demons, the offspring of the Watchers, led humanity back into sin. These evil spirits sought embodiment and influence. Some texts suggest they again mixed with humans, producing giants. The post-flood giants weren't as numerous or as large as pre-flood Nephilim, but they were still formidable. Genesis 6:1004 itself hints at this. After describing the Nephilim and their origin, it adds almost as an afterthought, and also afterward. That phrase dangles unexplained. Nephilim existed before the flood and also afterward. The text anticipates the reader wondering about post-flood giants and provides advance confirmation that, yes, they returned. The first post-flood mention of unusual people appears in Genesis 10. Nimrod, described as a mighty warrior and mighty hunter before the Lord. The phrasing suggests more than human strength. His name means, "we will rebel." He built the first post-flood empire centered in Babylon. He likely initiated the Tower of Babel project, and ancient Jewish texts describe him as a giant or giant-influenced. By the time of Abraham, giants were established in Canaan. Genesis 14 mentions the Rephaites in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzites in Ham, the Emites in Shaveh Kiriataim, and the Horites in Seir. These groups were giant clans controlling specific territories. Abraham's military campaign against them is described, though he avoided direct confrontation with the giants themselves. Genesis 15 lists 10 nations occupying Canaan that Israel would eventually displace. Among them, the Rephaites and Anakites were giant clans. God promised Abraham that his descendants would inherit this land, but the actual conquest would wait 400 years until the sin of the Amorites reached full measure. That phrase about sin reaching full measure likely refers to genetic corruption through giant bloodlines spreading. When the corruption threatened to consume all Canaanite nations, God commanded Israel to destroy them completely. Deuteronomy 2 describes the Emites who used to live in Moab. They were strong and numerous and tall as the Anakites. Like the Anakites, they too were considered Rephaites. The Moabites called them Emites. The text treats these giant clans as historical fact, not mythology. Their size and strength were notable enough to warrant specific mention. The Anakites deserve special attention. Numbers 13:22 says Ahiman, Shezai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, lived in Hebron. These 3 brothers were so imposing that 10 of the 12 Israelite spies were terrified. Only Joshua and Caleb maintained courage. The faithless spies reported that they seemed like grasshoppers in their own eyes and looked the same to the giants. The name Anak means long-necked or giant. His father was Arba, described as the greatest man among the Anakites. Hebron was originally called Kiriath Arba after him. These weren't random tall people. They were a distinct clan with recorded genealogy and territorial control, and they were formidable enough that Israel refused to enter Canaan, resulting in 40 years of wilderness wandering. When Israel finally entered the land under Joshua, the giant clans became military targets. Joshua 11:21-22 records that Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country, from Hebron, Debir, and Anab, from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. No Anakites were left in Israelite territory. Only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did any survive. Those three cities, Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod, were Philistine strongholds. The giants who fled there integrated into Philistine society. They became Philistine champions, and centuries later, one of their descendants would step into a valley and challenge Israel. Subscribe if you're connecting biblical dots you never saw before. Like this video if the giant survival after the flood makes more sense now, and comment on which explanation you think is most biblically sound. The giant bloodline survived in Philistine territory 4 generations. They became an elite warrior class, families of giants who trained from youth for combat, and the most famous of these families produced a champion who would become Israel's worst nightmare until a shepherd boy arrived. Chapter 10: Og's Iron Bed and the Last Giants. Before we reach David and Goliath, we must discuss Og, king of Bashan. Deuteronomy 3:11 carefully records that Og was the last of the Rephates. His bed was made of iron and measured 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. It is still in Rabbah of the Ammonites. Why mention his bed's dimensions? Because it proved his size. Ancient people didn't typically make beds much larger than their bodies. A 9-cubit bed, over 13 feet long, housed a man between 11 and 13 feet tall. Og wasn't just tall, he was massive, and he ruled the kingdom of giants in Bashan. Og's territory included 60 fortified cities with high walls and bronze gates. Deuteronomy 3005 describes cities fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, plus many unwalled villages. His kingdom was militarily sophisticated and economically prosperous. These weren't primitive giants living in caves. They were organized, advanced, and powerful. Moses led Israel against Og after defeating Sihon, king of the Amorites. Deuteronomy 3:3 says the Lord gave Og and all his people into Israel's hands. They struck him down, leaving no survivors. Every man, woman, and child in Og's kingdom was killed. Complete annihilation by divine command. Why such harsh judgment? Because Og's people were Rephates, giant-blooded descendants of the Nephilim. Their continued existence threatened the genetic purity of humanity. The seed of the woman through whom Messiah would come had to remain uncorrupted. These giants represented corrupted seed, genetic pollution that served demonic purposes. Their destruction was surgical removal of cancer. After Og's death, the text declares he was the last of the Rephates, but giants still existed. The Anakites survived in Philistine territory. The designation, last of the Rephates, likely means the last of the Rephate kingdom, not the last giant individual. With Og's death, giants lost political power and territorial control. They survived only as refugees among the Philistines. 1 Samuel introduces these Philistine giants. David's early military career involved fighting them. 2 Samuel 21 lists 4 encounters between David's warriors and Philistine giants. These battles occurred after David killed Goliath, proving Goliath had brothers, cousins, or fellow clansmen who continued fighting Israel. The first encounter involved Ishbi-Benob, who wore a bronze spearhead weighing 300 shekels, about 7.5 pounds, and a new sword. He threatened to kill David personally. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue, struck the Philistine down, and killed him. After this incident, David's men refused to let him join them in battle anymore, fearing Israel would lose its king. The second battle occurred at Gob. Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Saph, one of the descendants of Rapha. The name Rapha connects these giants to the Rephite clans. They weren't isolated freaks, they were members of a giant bloodline that stretched back through Og to the antediluvian Nephilim. Another battle at Gob featured a giant with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. This genetic abnormality appears in modern humans occasionally, called polydactyly, but combined with gigantism, it marked this warrior as particularly unusual. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of Shemaiah, David's brother, killed him. The 4th battle involved a giant literally called the brother of Goliath. 2 Samuel 21:19 states that Elhanan, son of Jair the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. Chronicles records his name as Lami. Goliath wasn't alone. He had family, kept fighting even after his famous death. These 4 battles prove several things. First, multiple giants existed in Philistine territory after the conquest of Canaan. Second, they were trained warriors, not just large people. Third, they had access to advanced weapons. Fourth, they specifically targeted Israel's leadership. And fifth, defeating them required Israel's best warriors. These weren't easy victories. The giant families maintained their bloodline intentionally. They intermarried within their clan to preserve size and strength. They trained their children in warfare from youth. They forged specialized weapons suited to their size. And they served as Philistine champions, the elite warriors who fought when normal soldiers couldn't win. This context makes David's victory over Goliath even more remarkable. Goliath wasn't an anomaly. He was a product of a military tradition. He'd been trained since childhood. He'd fought in previous battles and won. He had every advantage of size, strength, equipment, and experience. And he faced a teenager with a sling. Why did Philistines keep using giant champions after Goliath's defeat? Because it usually worked. For 40 days, Goliath challenged Israel and no one answered. The strategy of fielding a champion no opponent could match had proven effective. One giant could defeat an army by breaking their morale. So even after David killed Goliath, the Philistines deployed other giants. It's just that David's mighty men learned from his example. Faith and skill could overcome size. Like this video if you never knew Goliath had brothers and relatives who continued the fight. Share this with someone who only knows David and Goliath but not what came after. Comment on why you think God allowed these giant bloodlines to survive so long. The giant clans eventually disappeared from history. The last mention comes during David's reign. After his mighty men killed Goliath's relatives, giants fade from the biblical record. Their bloodlines either died out, intermarried with normal humans until the genetic distinctiveness, or fled to regions outside biblical history. Whatever the case, the age of giants ended. But their story teaches critical lessons about spiritual warfare, genetics, and the persistence of evil across generations. Now we return to that valley, to the confrontation that changed David's life and demonstrated that giants could fall. The most famous underdog victory in history happened because a shepherd boy saw reality correctly while everyone else saw only fear. Chapter 11, David's secret weapon against Goliath. The Valley of Elah stretches between 2 ridges in the hill country west of Jerusalem. In ancient times, it formed a natural battleground where armies met. Israel camped on one ridge, Philistia on the other, and between them, a dry riverbed where champions could fight while armies watched. For 40 days, Goliath issued his challenge twice daily. Morning and evening, he strode into the valley, armor glinting, voice booming, daring any Israelite to face him. 1 Samuel 17:4 describes him as over 9 feet tall. His bronze coat of scale armor weighed 125 pounds. His bronze leg guards and javelin completed his defense. The iron point of his spear weighed 15 pounds, and a shield bearer walked before him. The challenge was simple. Send one man to fight me. If he wins, Philistines become your servants. If I win, you serve us. Single combat to decide the war's outcome. Except no. Israelite accepted. King Saul, who stood head and shoulders above other men, refused to fight. His entire army, including veteran warriors, cowered at the sight of this giant. David arrived delivering food to his brothers. He was young, perhaps 15 or 16, still beardless. Tending sheep was his occupation. Music was his talent. He'd been anointed secretly by Samuel as Israel's next king, but that hadn't become public. To everyone at the battlefield, he was just a shepherd boy bringing supplies. But David possessed something the soldiers lacked. He'd already fought battles, not against humans, but against predators. When a lion or bear attacked his flock, David didn't run. He didn't abandon the sheep. He attacked the predator, grabbed it by its hair or mane, struck it dead. He'd killed both lions and bears defending his sheep. This matters more than most people realize. David's occupation trained him perfectly for fighting giants. Shepherds in ancient Israel used slings not for fun but as serious weapons. They practiced constantly, achieving remarkable accuracy. Judges 20:16 mentions 700 select Benjamite troops who could sling a stone at a hare and not miss. Shepherds can hit a wolf threatening their flock at 75 yards. David had spent years perfecting his aim. The sling wasn't a toy. It was a deadly weapon that could kill from distance. Ancient armies employed slingers as specialized troops. A skilled slinger could launch a stone over 100 miles per hour. That's faster than a major league fastball. And the stones they used weren't pebbles. They were smooth river stones roughly the size of a baseball, weighing several ounces. Getting hit by one was like being struck by a bullet. David also possessed faith based on experience. He'd seen God deliver him from lions and bears. He knew the same God could deliver him from this giant. His confidence wasn't cockiness. It was experiential trust built through previous crises. He'd been tested before. He'd watched God intervene before, and he believed God would do it again. When David volunteered to fight, Saul tried to give him royal armor, but David couldn't move in it. The weight was wrong. The fit was wrong. He hadn't trained in armor, so he took it off and approached Goliath as he was, as a shepherd with his staff and sling. He went to the brook and chose 5 smooth stones. Why 5 when he only needed 1? Some suggest he expected to miss and wanted backups. Others propose he intended to fight Goliath's 4 brothers mentioned in later passages. More likely, David simply prepared as shepherds always did. You don't go after a predator with 1 shot. You bring multiple stones so you're never caught without ammunition. Goliath saw David approaching and was insulted. Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? He cursed David by his gods, promised to feed David's flesh to birds and wild animals. The giant saw an unarmed boy approaching and assumed victory was certain. His arrogance was his weakness. David responded not with threats but with declaration. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. David's confidence wasn't in his skill, it was in God's reputation. The battle wasn't David versus Goliath, it was God versus someone who'd insulted him. David was just the instrument. Goliath charged. Massive legs pounding, earth shaking, armor clanking, a living avalanche of muscle and metal and rage bearing down on a teenager. And David ran toward him, not away but toward, closed the distance so the giant couldn't react in time, reached into his bag, loaded his sling, spun it until it hummed, and released. The stone flew straight. It struck Goliath in the forehead, the only unprotected part of his face. The impact cracked his skull. His eyes went blank. His knees buckled, and the giant crashed face first into the valley floor. The ground shook from his fall. David ran forward. He had no sword of his own, so he grabbed Goliath's massive blade from its sheath. With effort, he raised it above his head, and with a powerful stroke, he severed the giant's head from his body. The champion of Philistia was dead, killed by a shepherd, defeated by a boy, brought down by faith and a stone. The Philistines panicked. Their champion was dead. Their strategy had failed. They turned and fled. Israel's army, seeing the giant fall, erupted in pursuit. They chased the Philistines all the way to Gath and Ekron, slaughtering them along the way. A battle that had been deadlocked for 40 days ended in minutes because one person believed God when everyone else believed their eyes. David kept Goliath's head as a trophy. He took it to Jerusalem eventually, though at that time Jerusalem wasn't yet Israel's capital. He kept Goliath's weapons in his tent. These weren't just souvenirs. They were testimonies to God's deliverance, reminders that giants fall when God fights. Subscribe if David's victory is inspiring you to face your own giants. Like this video if you're seeing the story with new details that make it even more powerful. Comment below on what giant you're facing and how this story applies to your situation. David's life changed that day. He went from unknown shepherd to national hero. Saul took him into the palace. Women sang songs about David killing tens of thousands. And eventually, after years of conflict with Saul, David became king. But the giant bloodline wasn't finished. Goliath's relatives would continue threatening Israel, and the pattern of giants rising and being defeated would echo through scripture and history. Chapter 12. The bloodline that survived after David killed Goliath, after Israel routed the Philistine army, after celebration faded and normal life resumed, the giant problem remained. Goliath had brothers, cousins, relatives who inherited the same genetics and the same hatred for Israel. 2 Samuel 21 records 4 battles between David's warriors and these surviving giants. But the giant bloodline survived beyond biblical history. Ancient texts describe giant clans in various regions after Israel's conquest. The Amorites reportedly had giant kings. Egyptian records mention tall foreign rulers. Greek legends spoke of titans and giants who preceded their civilization. Roman historians recorded encounters with unusually large warriors among barbarian tribes. Some researchers trace giant legends across cultures and suggest a worldwide presence. The Nephilim weren't limited to Canaan. They spread across the earth before the flood. After the flood, giant genetics appeared in multiple locations. Native American legends speak of red-haired giants. Polynesian myths describe massive warriors. African traditions tell of giant ancestors. Every inhabited continent has giant legends. Archaeological evidence complicates the picture. Occasionally, massive bones are discovered that seem too large for normal humans. Reports surface of 7 or 8-foot skeletons found in burial mounds. Photographs from the late 1800s and early 1900s show excavations with unusually large remains, but many of these claims lack proper documentation. Bones disappear, photos prove doctored, and credible evidence remains elusive. The Smithsonian Institution has been accused of suppressing giant evidence. Reports claim they've destroyed skeletons that didn't fit evolutionary narratives. Whistleblowers suggest a deliberate cover-up, but official denials and lack of verifiable proof leave the matter unresolved. Either giant skeletons are so rare that few legitimate examples exist, or there's been systematic suppression of evidence that challenges mainstream anthropology. What we know for certain is that the Bible treats giants as historical fact. They're mentioned across multiple books by different authors over centuries. They're described with specific names, measurements, and genealogies. They appear in narrative history, not poetic literature or obvious allegory. And both Old and New Testament authors reference them as real beings. Jesus himself referenced the days of Noah as literal history. He said that as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and being given in marriage up to the day Noah entered the ark. Then the flood came and destroyed them all. Jesus validated the flood account. By extension, he validated the flood account. By extension, he validated the events leading to it, including the Nephilim. Peter and Jude both reference the fallen angels. 2 Peter 2:4 states that God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment. Jude verse 6 adds that angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, God has kept in darkness. bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. These New Testament passages confirm that angels sinned in a specific way that resulted in imprisonment. They reference the same events Enoch described. They validate that something happened in the antediluvian period involving angelic rebellion and human corruption. The details might be debated, but the core reality is affirmed. The practical question becomes what this means for us today. Are giants coming back? Will the Nephilim return before Christ's second coming? Jesus said the last days would be like Noah's days. Does that include giants? Some prophecy teachers believe genetic manipulation today parallels what happened before the flood. CRISPR technology allows editing human DNA. Scientists discuss creating designer babies. Transhumanism seeks to merge humans with technology. Artificial intelligence raises questions about consciousness and humanity. If fallen angels corrupted genetics once, could they do it again through modern science? The Book of Daniel describes the end times with mysterious language. Chapter 2's vision shows a statue with feet of iron mixed with clay. Daniel interprets this as a divided kingdom, partly strong and partly brittle. The iron and clay don't mix well. Some scholars suggest this references genetic mixing, possibly between humans and something else. It's speculative, but Daniel's language allows for unusual interpretations. Regardless of end-time speculation, the giant narrative teaches critical lessons. First, corruption spreads if not confronted. The Watcher's sin produced Nephilim. The Nephilim corrupted humanity further. Unchecked evil multiplies. Second, God judges thoroughly when He judges. The flood destroyed not just humans but all corrupted life. Divine patience has limits. Third, remnants survive. Despite judgment, giant bloodlines returned. Evil persists until final judgment. Fourth, ordinary people can defeat impossible odds through faith. David was nobody special physically, but he trusted God and acted courageously. The giant fell. Fifth, battles repeat across generations. David killed Goliath, but David's warriors had to kill Goliath's brothers. Each generation fights its own version of the same war. Sixth, truth is preserved even when suppressed. The Book of Enoch was removed from most Bibles, but its content survived. Truth doesn't disappear because authorities hide it. The giant mystery connects past and future. It explains ancient monuments and legends. It provides context for biblical passages otherwise confusing. It reveals spiritual warfare underlying physical events, and it warns that the patterns of Noah's day could return. As we close this journey through the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim, and the giants who survived them, consider what giants you face. Not literal 9-foot warriors, but the impossible challenges that make you feel like a grasshopper. The addictions that seem unbeatable, the diseases that appear incurable, the circumstances that look unchangeable, the enemies who feel invincible. David looked at Goliath and saw an enemy of God. He didn't see an unbeatable giant, he saw a defiant rebel who'd insulted the living God. Perspective changed everything. What would happen if you saw your giants the same way? Not as impossible obstacles, but as enemies of God who are about to learn who really rules. The Nephilim are gone, their bloodline ended, but the spiritual forces that empowered them remain active until Christ returns. Demons still seek embodiment. Fallen angels still oppose God's purposes. Evil still corrupts and destroys. But God still delivers those who trust Him. Giants still fall when faith confronts them. The Book of Enoch opens windows into events Genesis mentions briefly. It reveals that human history involves more than human actors. Spiritual warfare shapes physical events. Angels and demons influence cultures and genetics. And God intervenes decisively when corruption threatens His redemptive plan. Like this video if this exploration challenged and inspired you. Share it with someone who needs to know they can face their giants. Subscribe for more biblical deep dives that connect scripture, history, and archaeology. And comment below with what giant you're going to confront with God's help. The flood destroyed the antediluvian world, but it didn't destroy evil. That awaits final judgment when Christ returns. Until then, we live in the tension between resurrection and restoration. The same God who shut Noah in the ark delivers through storms. The same God who gave David courage against Goliath gives us courage today. The same God who imprisoned the Watchers will ultimately imprison Satan and every fallen power. Justice is coming. Evil's days are numbered. Giants will fall. Walk with God like Enoch did. Build the ark like Noah did. Face the giant like David did. And trust that the story ends with God victorious and his people saved. The Book of Enoch whispers truths that echo through eternity. Listen carefully. The giants are real, but so is the God who defeats them.